Do you remember the green clay boy who could step into books, change his shape, and bring an orange horse with him into worlds that followed no rules at all? Millions of children watched all of that every week, and no one thought there was anything strange about it. That was the Gumby Show. Gumby had his loyal Pokey by his side, Prickle, Goo, and an entire world where almost anything could happen. But after nearly 70 years, it turns out that the strangest things about Gumby never appeared on screen. Because behind that gentle clay boy were stories about Hollywood, money, religion, family tragedy, and unbelievable decisions behind the scenes that were even harder to believe than Gumby's own adventures. Today, we're going to count down 20 weird facts you didn't know about the Gumby Show. And stay until number 1, because we'll return to that terrifying moment to find out what really happened to the man writhing on the floor while the entire studio was still applauding. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because if Gumby can bend without breaking, your thumb can certainly bend enough to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Number 1, the bump on Gumby's head was actually created to solve a rather awkward problem. Gumby originally did not have the famous head shape we know. Clokey designed him to be tall, thin, and almost just a straight block of clay. But when he looked at the finished figure, he realized there was a problem. In Clokey's own words, it looked too much like a phallic symbol to appear on children's television. The solution was to add a bump that leaned to one side of his head. Clokey later gave it a nicer name, the Bump of Wisdom, inspired by the protrusion on the heads of Buddhist figures. Other details were also created for very practical reasons. Ruth suggested the gingerbread man-shaped body. The feet were made wide so Gumby would not fall over during filming, and his final height was set at 7 inches. But that bump also contained a story of its own. At Clokey's grandfather's farm in Michigan, there was a photograph of his father at age 18, with a large lock of hair that always stuck up. Clokey once said that the outline in the photograph almost matched the shape of Gumby's head. That detail became even more meaningful because Clokey's father had died in a car accident when he was only 9 years old, not long after his parents separated. That famous head was at once a way to avoid censorship, a Buddhist symbol, and a boy's memory of his late father's hair. Number 2, a 12-year-old boy accidentally helped change internet law. David Van Allen ran an internet service provider in Pennsylvania. When his son Christopher turned 12, he decided to buy him a domain name as a birthday present. Christopher's nickname was Pokey, so the domain name he chose was Pokey.org. Probably one of the coolest birthday gifts of the early internet era. Then an unexpected letter arrived. Prema Toy Company, which held the Clokey family's trademarks, demanded that the 12-year-old boy stop using a website that simply told the story of his own life, a boy named Pokey. The early internet immediately erupted. Harvard's Archive of Domain Name Disputes later classified the case as reverse domain name hijacking, a term used when a trademark owner pressures someone who has a legitimate right to use that name. The story went even further. When the Senate drafted legislation against cybersquatting the following year, the committee report specifically named Pokey.org as an example of the kind of person the bill was never intended to target. But then Art Clokey found out what his lawyer had done. He immediately withdrew the complaint, wrote a letter referring to the spirit of Gumby, and personally called Christopher. The two talked for more than an hour. Gumby's creator apologized to a 7th grade student and told him that he had handled everything exactly the way Gumby would have. Christopher got to keep the domain name. No one had to pay the Clokey side a single cent. As for his father, who personally covered all the legal costs, he later told the press that his son's allowance had basically been used up until around the year 2050. Number 3, Art Clokey gave a pizza shop 100 years of rights to use Gumby. 2 finance students at the University of Florida dropped out in 1985 to open a pizza shop in Gainesville and named it after one of their nicknames. Jeff O'Brien was nicknamed Gumby because he absolutely refused to take off a green tracksuit that was the exact same color as the character Clokey created. So he and Chance Hippler put the name Gumby's Pizza on the storefront and went into business. Then they went straight to Art Clokey and walked away with the rights to use the brand for 100 years. 100 years. The same man who had protected this character like a family treasure for 40 years gave 2 college dropouts an entire century of rights to use Gumby for pizza, and they took full advantage of it. Garlic and cheese-covered breadsticks became Pokey sticks, while Gumby's face appeared on both the top and bottom of every pizza box. The founders happily admitted that they did this, so the brand image could still be seen even from the bottom of a dorm room trash can. The original Gainesville location remains the busiest in the chain to this day, thanks to the bar crowd that keeps the ordering phones ringing until 4 a.m. 40 years later, they are still opening locations in college towns, while Gumby's television revivals have come and gone. The breadsticks have lasted longer than the cartoon, and the company says that Clokey later became a regular customer. Every time he visited, he ordered vegetarian pizza and vegetarian sandwiches. The gentlest man in children's television quietly sat eating dinner in the loudest restaurant in Florida. Number 4, the church wrote a $1 million check to the creator of Gumby. In 1958, the president of the United Lutheran Church in America set aside up to $1 million to create an entirely new children's television program. And the person chosen was Art Clokey, who was becoming famous with a lump of green clay named Gumby. This choice was not random at all. Art had studied at a seminary before entering the film industry, while Ruth was the daughter of a Lutheran minister and had once been in charge of educational programs for the church. So Clokey quickly accepted. The result was Davy and Goliath, the story of a boy and a talking dog that only Davy could hear. The program premiered in February 1961 and lasted into the 70s, not avoiding heavy subjects like prejudice, loss, and death, even though its main audience was children. Ruth continued to keep the program going for many years after Art moved on to other work. According to multiple sources, money from the church also helped fund Gumby's return in the 60s. So the man who once placed a Buddhist-influenced bump of wisdom on Gumby's head used money from the Lutheran Church to help bring Gumby back to the screen. Decades later, Davy and Goliath was even revived to advertise Mountain Dew, and the royalties from that campaign then helped fund a Christmas special. A talking dog, $1 million from the church, and a soft drink commercial. It all connected through Art Clokey's clay world. Number 5, Gumby's eyes are black because 1950s TV could not see the color red. Originally, Gumby's eyes were red, and Pokey's were too. But on the black and white TVs that most people used at the time, the red pupils appeared as the same light shade of gray as the body. The eyes were still there, but the audience could barely see them. In fact, the first puppets had even bigger problems. The early prototypes had no hands, only an empty space where the mouth should have been, and the color was closer to a dull teal than the bright green we are familiar with today. Gumby at that time looked more like something that had been left in the refrigerator for too long than a character made for children. The fix for the eyes was extremely simple. Replace the red with small black discs, film it again, and suddenly Gumby had a clearly defined face. Then color TV arrived and the original problem no longer existed. But no one changed Gumby's eyes back to red. The black eyes had now become part of Gumby. The red only returned decades later on toys. So if you had a bendable Gumby sitting on your shelf when you were a child, the red eyes on that toy were actually closer to Art Clokey's original design than any version of Gumby you ever saw on TV. Number 6, Google hired the very team behind Gumby to create a Google Doodle. On October 12, 2011, for Art Clokey's 90th birthday, Google turned its homepage into a small stage for Gumby. Instead of a normal illustration, the doodle appeared with a toy block bearing the letter G and 5 clay balls in Google's colors. Clicking on each ball made them transform one by one into the blockheads, Prickle, Goo, Pokey, and Gumby, all moving with the stop-motion technique associated with Clokey. What made it special was that Google did not choose just any animation studio. They went to Primavision, Clokey's studio, and had Joe Clokey supervise every movement to preserve the style his father had created. With a tight deadline, the team coordinated by phone, Skype, and email, creating each puppet specifically just to produce a few seconds of finished footage. More than half a century earlier, Art Clokey had done something similar with clay in a homemade studio. By 2011, a company that did not even exist back then hired his own team, using his own technique to honor him on the Google homepage. Not bad at all for a lump of clay that began its life on a black and white TV screen. Number 7. Gumby was destroyed by the very thing that made him famous. Every time Gumby changed shape, stretched, flattened, or bent his body into a different form, the clay became deformed and could never completely return to the way it was before. So Gumby was not just being animated, he was actually being gradually worn away in every scene. According to Nicole LaPointe McKay, a puppet maker at Clokey Productions, just 1 minute of finished animation could use up as many as 20 Gumbys, sometimes even more. 20 puppets just to get 60 seconds on screen. The studio lights made things even worse, softening the clay so much that the puppet sometimes had to be taken out of the studio. Gumby's famous philosophy is bend, don't break, but ironically, the process of creating Gumby was constantly destroying him. So every replacement Gumby had to match the one before it, down to the millimeter. They were made from a secret Van Aken clay formula, heated in a double boiler so the colors blended evenly, then poured into a mold surrounding a wire frame, which served as Gumby's skeleton. After cooling, sometimes in a refrigerator to speed up the process, Gumby was removed from the mold, the excess edges were trimmed away, air bubbles were patched, and he went through a process the studio actually called an oil massage to make the surface smoother. A faceplate was used to mark the positions of the features. Then the face was finished entirely by hand. All that work in exchange for just a few seconds of screen time. Before that, Gumby was damaged and another Gumby was brought in to replace him. Gumby was replaced more times than the drummer in an average rock band, and the funniest part is that he never realized it. Number 8. A failed toy led Gumby to a guru. In 1977, Art Clokey and his second wife Gloria released the bendable toy Moody Rudy. Not Gumby, but a new character made from a material advertised on the box as Express O Flex. A pretty good name. Unfortunately, no one wanted to buy Moody Rudy. They poured years and money into it, but got almost nothing back. Broken confused, the two flew to Bangalore to meet the guru Satya Sai Baba. Clokey even carried a tiny Gumby in his luggage. This was perhaps the only time an animated mascot made a pilgrimage to meet a guru. According to Clokey, when he held the toy, Sai Baba moved his hand in circles. Then sacred ash appeared and fell onto Gumby. After they returned, things began to change. Toy sales increased. Eddie Murphy played Gumby on Saturday Night Live, and Lorimar came along with an $8 million deal for a new series. Clokey spent the rest of his life viewing that trip as the moment everything turned around. The documentary about him was later even titled Gumby Dharma. Interestingly, back in the 60s, he had already named his toy company Prema, a Sanskrit word meaning universal love. It would take another 15 years before he actually set out to find it. Number 9. The producer who funded Gumby did not want a single cent back. Art Clokey's main job at the time was teaching at a military academy in Los Angeles. To earn extra income, he tutored a student in English. The boy's father was Sam Engel, a producer at 20th Century Fox and president of the Motion Picture Producers Association. Engel was very grateful for the help. He began inviting Clokey and his wife Ruth to the studio to attend preview screenings, then one day asked to see the little art film that Clokey often talked about. Clokey brought Gumbasia, 3.5 minutes of clay shapes moving to jazz music. Engel screened it in Daryl Zanuck's private screening room. 100 seats, a huge screen, a room normally reserved for movie stars now showing lumps of clay to a group of people in the industry. Engel was completely astonished. He stood up and paced back and forth in front of the screen while the projectionist rewound the film, then asked Clokey if he could turn those clay shapes into little characters to tell stories for children. Engel believed that children's television deserved something better. Clokey simply replied, "Sure, why not?" Engel then funded the project, but when Tom Sarnoff of NBC offered a 7-year contract, the man who had put up the money to help bring Gumby to life refused any benefits. "You take it," Engel said. "I don't want anything from this. No credit, no share of the profits, no ownership." What he wanted was simply for children to have something decent to watch on television. He got exactly that, then quietly walked away without asking for anything. Gumby existed for 60 years simply because a rich man's son happened to need someone to help him with his homework. Number 10. Gumby did Toy Story first, then Toy Story ran right over Gumby. A toy store, shelves packed with toys and everything suddenly coming to life as soon as no humans were watching. That was the idea behind Gumby's first appearance, in the pilot episode titled Adventures of Gumby. The pilot was filmed on January 29, 1955 in a converted garage with almost no budget and was never broadcast. 40 years later, Pixar used a similar premise and turned it into an entire empire. What makes it special is that Clokey filmed the episode on the exact day his daughter, Anne, was born. That is also why January 29th became Gumby's official birthday. The child and the clay character both appeared on the same day, but 4 decades later, the numbers became brutal. Gumby's only feature film opened in theaters in October 1995 with a budget of $2.8 million, but earned only about $57,000 at the box office, roughly the price of a good new car at the time. Just 1 month later, Toy Story arrived, changing the animation industry forever with a premise that Clokey had created with his own hands back when computers could not even render a beach ball. The title card in Clokey's movie read Gumby 1, but Gumby 2 never appeared. Even so, the story did not end entirely in failure. When it entered the home video market, the studio said the film sold nearly 1 million copies. A polite way of saying, yes, we lost in theaters, but we won in living rooms. Woody and Buzz continued forward with a series of sequels and even theme parks. And Gumby, he simply walked away with a title card forever stuck at number 1. Number 11, NBC canceled Gumby, so Clokey bought back his own character. The Gumby Show aired on NBC with Tootsie Roll as its sponsor and actually made a profit for the network. Art Clokey was paid $200 a week, later increased to $350, to write and produce the entire show. In 1959, that was a pretty good income, so this is not a story about a struggling artist. The real problem was ownership. The show was successful, but Clokey owned almost nothing. No royalties, no percentage of the profits, just a salary and a character he had created from clay and memories of his father. NBC ended the show on November 16, 1957. But instead of accepting it and moving on to another job, Clokey went back and bought all the ownership rights. Gumby, Pokey, and the entire cast of characters finally returned from NBC to the man who had created them. In an era when networks usually owned everything they finance, something like that almost never happened. And almost everything that came afterward grew out of this decision. The return in the 60s, the reruns, the comeback in the 80s, and finally the feature film. None of it could have happened if Gumby had remained sitting in NBC's vault. But then Clokey did something even stranger. He refused to sell anything. For about 7 years, he did not license a single Gumby toy because he did not want parents to think he was making money by exploiting children. Only when fan letters kept pouring in did Clokey change his mind. He lost a hit show, spent his own money to buy back his own character, then sat on a gold mine for 7 years simply because he did not want to give up his principles. Number 12. Gumby's voice was credited to Art Clokey's late father. Gumby originally did not even have an officially selected voice actor. During his appearances on Howdy Doody in 1955 and 1956, he was voiced by Ruth Eggleston, the wife of art director Al Eggleston, and Al was credited as the person who created Pokey. In other words, the same family gave Gumby both his voice and his best friend. The crew at the time was so small that just being in the studio meant you almost had a chance of being given a role. In 1957, Dallas McKennon took over and became the familiar voice of Gumby through the 60s, the revival in the 80s, and the 1995 movie. Art Clokey himself voiced Pokey, Prickle, and Gumbo, Gumby's father. The creator of the character ended up spending years playing the father of the very clay child he had created. But the credits of Gumby the movie contain a strange detail. Dallas McKennon's name does not appear where you would expect it. Instead, Gumby's voice is credited to Charles Farrington. That was Art Clokey's father, who was killed in a car accident when Art was only 9 years old. And he was also the man in the photograph with the lock of hair sticking up, an image that later became part of the inspiration for the bump on Gumby's head. So, in Gumby's only feature film, the character that carried traces of the appearance of Clokey's late father, ultimately also carried his name in the voice credits. Number 13. The man who kept Gumby alive never lived to see the day he was sold. Joe Clokey never intended to take over a clay empire. What he truly loved was plants. At just 8 years old, Joe grew cacti and succulents, loaded them onto a wagon, and took them to sell to a nursery near his home. Later, he studied horticulture at Cal Poly, wrote the Captain Ecology column for the student newspaper, served as president of the Native Plant Society, and built a business distributing educational films about agriculture and sustainability. Even his 3 children were given names connected to nature: Shasta, Sequoia, and Sage. Everything changed when Art Clokey died in his sleep in 2010. Joe, who had been called Gumby's little brother his entire life, took over Prima Vision with his wife Joan. For the next 8 years, Joe did not try to turn Gumby into a new brand. He chose to preserve the legacy, restoring the entire library from the original films, organizing exhibitions, festivals, parades, and meeting at Comic-Con with people who had loved Gumby since 1957. In November 2017, Joe and Joan published Gumby Imagined, a comprehensive book about his father's life and career. Just 4 months later, on March 2, 2018, Joe Clokey died of cardiac arrest in Santa Barbara. He was only 56 years old. By February 2022, Fox Entertainment had purchased all of Gumby, from television, film, streaming, and merchandise to the characters themselves. Gumby finally belonged to a major corporation, but the man who had spent the final years of his life protecting that legacy was no longer there to witness it. Number 14. Eddie Murphy's Gumby was actually a secret portrait of 2 real bitter men. For many adult viewers, the most memorable Gumby was no longer Art Clokey's gentle character. It was Eddie Murphy with a cigar, a bad temper, and the famous shout, "I'm Gumby, damn it!" But according to writer Barry Blaustein, Murphy was not actually doing an impression of Gumby at all. He was blending together 2 real men, his first manager, Robert Wachs, and comedian Pat Cooper, who was known for his harsh temper and for frequently attacking the performers around him. Gumby was simply the outer shell. The idea came about during a conversation among the writers about the shows they watched as children. From Clokey's Davy and Goliath, the conversation moved to Gumby, and Murphy began improvising an old bitter version of Gumby. The sketch aired on March 27, 1982, in which Gumby appeared to promote a memoir titled, "I'm Gumby, damn it." Art Clokey could have been furious, but his reaction was completely the opposite. He became a fan. According to Blaustein, the reason was very practical. Gumby toys started selling well again. Clokey even allowed SNL to dub Murphy's dialogue over footage of the real Gumby. One of the gentlest characters in children's television suddenly returned to the screen with a cigar and curse words. But that very version helped Gumby remain in popular culture for several more decades. Murphy brought Gumby back to Weekend Update in 2019. And this past April, when he received the AFI Life Achievement Award, Gumby also appeared to pay tribute to the man who had helped make him famous in a way no one could have expected. The Clay Boy survived through generations, and in the end even came back to thank the very man who had shattered his good-natured image. Number 15, the Gumby host that all of America thought had died on live television. On September 20th, 1955, Pinky Lee was hosting a live children's show when, at the 22-minute mark, he suddenly clutched himself, looked into the camera for help, and collapsed to the floor. The strange thing was that no one immediately realized something was wrong. The children in the audience kept cheering because Lee's show was already full of shouting, falling, and thrashing around. Even the director thought it was just part of the act. Lee lay writhing for about 10 seconds before the camera cut to the children who were still applauding. Lee did not have a heart attack. He was exhausted and suffering from a severe sinus infection after a demanding work schedule. A live show every weekday, plus an additional Saturday show for NBC. But the rumor that Pinky Lee died on television spread faster than the truth. It followed him for decades. One newspaper even referred to him as the late Pinky Lee while he was performing at a theater in that very city. Lee's television career was not as fortunate. After he was absent for several months, the Mickey Mouse Club took away his audience and NBC canceled the show in June 1956. A year later, Lee returned as the host of Fun Shop on The Gumby Show. But this opportunity lasted only until November 16, 1957, the day NBC canceled Gumby. Pinky Lee did not die on television as millions of people once believed, but just 5 months after returning with Gumby, his show died instead of him. And those are 20 weird facts you may never have known about The Gumby Show. After nearly 70 years, Gumby, Pokey, and that strange clay world are still an unforgettable part of the memories of generations of viewers. Now it's your turn. Which fact surprised you the most today? And which character from The Gumby Show do you remember the most? Share your answer in the comments below. If you enjoy behind-the-scenes stories and little-known secrets about classic television shows, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for spending your time with us until the end of the video. Wishing you good health, lots of joy, and we'll see you again on the next journey.